Got it. Recording in progress. I hear you. Hi, I'm Sara, and I am an alcoholic. That was a lot to live up to because Meg is amazing. She truly is amazing, and she's changed my life in so many ways. And I'm blessed. I'm blessed to follow her footsteps. I say yes to AA. It's what I do. Always, if I can. I'm a yes person. I'm the one that people go to when they have something no one really wants to do, but they know, I won't say no. So they come to me. So I say yes to everything. I'm doing a raffle on Friday at a golf scramble. And it's a lot of work, but it's such a joy. I love AA. I absolutely love AA. So a little about my pedigree. I have a sobriety date. It's May 18th, 2014. So a couple weeks ago, I celebrated 8 years, and it's amazing. My goal was to get 7 months. That was my goal. I figured I'd be healed and done, ready to move on. 7 months. I don't know why that was my figuring, but the life I have today is so dramatically different and amazing than when I walked into these rooms. I have a home group. It's the Love and Service group here in Pleasant Hill. We meet on Sundays and Thursdays, and our Sunday, if you're up at 9 p.m., it is a Zoom meeting. It's a speaker meeting. You can find it at loveandservicegroup.org. There's my pitch. I am of service to my home group in a couple of ways. I do intergroup, which I don't know for you, but for us, that's sort of our county's group. We put on workshops, we do events, and right now I do the communique, which is like the newsletter every week. So that's my job there. And then I'm the recording secretary for general service. I have a meeting tonight for that. And then I am involved in a conference. I do a lot. I do a lot of AA. I am sponsored. I sponsor, it's a blessing. It is not the life I expected, but it's, the life God gave me. So a little bit about, I was going to set a timer because I am a talker. There we go. I grew up, so Martinez is the county seat of Contra Costa County, but it's about 20 miles east of San Francisco, give or take. Lenora can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not, it's the suburbs, it's just the straight suburbs. And this is basically where I grew up. I grew up one town over. So I did not migrate far from where I was birthed. I grew up in an affluent community. It was well-to-do and, all the haves, and I never felt like I fit in. Never. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mom had a bit of a drug problem, and she was an aerobics instructor and a masseuse and a waitress, and sort of scrambling to get by, and in a community where everyone drove Rolls or these fancy cars, and here we were sort of living paycheck to paycheck. And that wasn't what made me feel less than or like I didn't fit in. I just felt wrong always. I grew up feeling like everyone else knew how to life and I just didn't. And I felt like I was in a constant state of agitation. Like I had a spring inside me that was coiled and never could be released. And so I just was uncomfortable in my skin. And I took that to mean that there was something just wrong with me, that I was just a broken person. My parents didn't pay much attention to me. They were gone a lot. And I felt like that meant that I was not loved. Sorry, my phone just rang and my computer went crazy. That it made me feel like unwanted as a person. And so I just grew up not liking myself. And so when I went and had that first drink I think I was 16, I was a late bloomer in the rooms I've discovered. I thought 16 so young, and then you hear 10 and you're like, wow, you guys are crazy. But I was 16 when I took my first drink, and I drank out of anger. I was really, really mad at someone. And it was the best solution to that, because as soon as I started drinking, I couldn't stop. It was 1992 and we were drinking Barnells and James. And I just drank and drank and drank. And then I didn't have to feel, like I was so constantly in a state of feeling. I was big emotions. I'm a very dramatic person. Feelings follow suit. And so to have that numbness was just intoxicating. That's what I wanted. But the problem is because I don't know how to stop once I start drinking, I drank to a blackout. And I was terrified when I came to on that bathroom floor, sick as a dog the next morning, that I had shown someone some truth, that I had told someone something about me that was honest, because I was just lying all the time. And I was scared of that blackout because I knew that eventually I just couldn't control myself. So I worked really hard the next few years to manage the drinking, to really be mindful of how much, but it was work. It was a lot of work. And it was exhausting. And it didn't give me the desired effect of the numbness that I wanted. And so, the thing about life is that it doesn't get easier, it gets harder. And as life got harder, my problems got bigger. But when I was, when I was 20, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that's not a great diagnosis. And I was the only one around, so I was taking care of her. And it was the worst. It was the worst. I mean, watching someone you love like that, if anyone ever has experienced, as a caregiver, watching someone deteriorate, it's devastating, especially when you're a 21-year-old girl with no life skills and no ability to control emotional, stability. And so I drank a lot, as much as I could, all the time. And I was a bartender in San Francisco, so it was really convenient because I could drink a lot all the time, as much as I wanted. And and the problem with me, and you might relate, is that I can't turn it off. Like once that ball starts rolling, it is on, and I will drink and I will drink and I will drink until something physically stops me from drinking. And usually that's either a blackout or a pass out. It's always unconsciousness, because I will drink to unconsciousness, because blackouts, I always blacked out. So that wasn't a big deal. But, by the end of this sort of jag of taking care of my mom and working as a bartender and drinking as much as I could drink, I was living in San Francisco. There's a section of town called the Tenderloin, and it's the worst of the worst. It's where the drug addicts congregate. A lot of unhoused people live there. It's the same today. It's not a good area. And I was living in a residential hotel in the Tenderloin, and it was dark and it was dirty and it was dangerous, and it was absolutely everything that my life growing up was not in Lafayette, this small town. And I thought, this is the life I deserve. I deserve this misery. I deserve this unhappiness because I'm a terrible person. That's why my life has been so hard, because I deserve it. And when my mom died when I was 25, I thought, I tried to pull it together. I really did. I tried, and I basically just made a lot of really bad life choices, but it seemed good at the time. Like I married an alcoholic who, like a raging alcoholic, he made me look great. And we just had this crazy life. He was getting arrested all the time and I was bailing him out, and, he was breaking things, and it was just disaster. And it was like, this is the chaos I need. And it was great until it wasn't. It got pretty ungreat pretty quick. But by the time I was 30, I divorced him. And I had some outside issues that I had dealt with, sort of in my 20s, that I finally got rid of. I said, those were my problems. It's not drinking, it's the others, it's the rest. So I'm only going to drink, and my life will be sunshine and rainbows. And that is not how that works. If you're an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, there are no sunshines, there are no rainbows. It just is a descent. And I descended. I was a bar drinker, and that was one of my justifications why I wasn't an alcoholic, because I only drank at bars. I didn't drink at home alone unless it was the weekend, or unless I had something to do at home that needed drinking, like packing or cleaning or, making dinner. There was all these, I had all these just this once, just this one time. This doesn't count. And what it all added up to is I drank all the time, all the time. And I was a miserable drunk. I was thinking about it, whenever you share, I don't know, I always sort of think about what my life was like. And I hated my life. I hated myself. I hated my job. I hated my family. I hated everyone I came in contact with. They were all the enemy. It's like, I don't know how I can relate to that person because it's so dramatically different than who I am today. But like, I was just a seething ball of anger. And it was all everyone else's fault. I was the victim of this life, and everyone else was to blame. And if that person hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had to drink. And if that person hadn't have said that to me at work, I wouldn't have had to drink. And like, I remember once I was on my way to work and there was a 4-way stop sign in this little small, quaint, little town that I worked in. And this person ran the stop sign and cut me off. How dare. And I drank at that person that night. That was the reason I drank, because I was like, I was so mad all day at that random stranger who forgot about me as soon as he drove past. And I that was the reason I drank that night. And I like remember that story very specifically, but there were hundreds of them. There was all these excuses and all these justifications and all this rationale around being a low bottom drunk. And I managed to keep my job, which is a miracle, because I got in a lot of fights at work. I was a little bit of a troublemaker, and I would write these horrible emails and then just hit send. And it was like, maybe pause, but no, so my life was just, it was utter destruction. God, I was so unhappy. And I drove drunk every day. I basically would drink to a blackout at a bar and wake up at home and then be like, well, that was great. Glad I'm home. But I have no, notion of how I got there or what state I got, who I left in my wake. I have no idea. So I finally got in some trouble with the law. I came to at a bar, which is never a good sentence to utter. And I was arguing with the bartender, and the bartender kicked me out. I think I had done something or said something or made some trouble. And so he kicked me out of kicked me out of the bar, saw me get into my car and called the police. And as they should have, I was way too drunk to drive. And the police pulled me over. And the first thing they said was, have you been drinking tonight? And I said, oh, yes, sir, a lot. It was past the point of being able to lie my way out of that one. And I'm a good, honest person. And that's not true. And so they arrested me. I was offended and appalled. I'm like, don't you know who I am and where I'm from? I'm a good girl from Lafayette. And they did not care. And so they arrested me, and they put me in this little room, and they're asking me questions and stuff. And they had me make one phone call and I called, it was, by this point, it was about 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. And I had them call my friend that I've been friends with since junior high. We've been friends for, at this point, 25 years or whatever. And she didn't answer because she's a suburban mom. She was asleep, and I'm in a drunk tank. And they, so it went downhill in some fashion, and my safety was of concern to them. So they 5150'd me. I'm just assuming you know what that means. So yeah, they threw me in a mental hospital. And I woke up on a Wednesday morning in one of their smocks, because my shirt had one of those little pussy bows, and you're not allowed to have anything with a tie. And so they had made me change into one of their little thingies. And I woke up on this cot in a mental hospital on a Wednesday morning, still drunk from the night before, thinking, what happened to me? Like, what happened? I had a lot of advantages growing up, like all my friends went to college, all my friends are successful, they all have children or married, they're living a life. And I'm locked in. Not that this was not my first trip to a mental hospital. So, I'm not judging, but this definitely wasn't the Wednesday morning that I had anticipated. So they finally released me from the mental hospital. You have to sober up. Basically, that was their prerequisite to let me go, was I had to blow a 0.0. So they released me once I sobered up, and I went and picked up my car, and I called my friend who had, the person that had been my one phone call, because there were like 37 messages from her because she could not find me. She called the police station, she called my work, she showed up at my house, she went to my work, like trying to find me, because I had basically, she gotten a call in the middle of the night, like, your friend's drunk, come pick her up. And the end, I disappeared. And so she showed up at my house, and she was so upset. She was so upset. And I was dumbfounded, because I thought, no one cares. Who cares about me? Like, I don't matter. I don't care about me. Why would you care about me? It was beyond my understanding that someone would be that invested in my well-being, because I was not invested in my well-being. And so it was her concern that got me into treatment. It was her caring. It was knowing that if bad things happen to me, she's affected, which just didn't occur to me. And I thought, oh, maybe I better do something. So I called, I belonged to, my hospital thing. I called them, and I got into treatment the next Monday. And I managed to stay sober from that DUI to that Monday. And then I got into the treatment. And I would like to say that is my sobriety date. It is not, but spoiler alert. And but so, because the thing about that treatment was that there was a lot of like talk therapy, and a lot of like, this is your brain on drugs, you know what I mean? Like a lot of sort of like educational variety. And so I managed to stay sober with them for 63 days. And on the 63rd day, me and another patient at that treatment facility went out. We went to Chipotle, and he said, I bet you can just have one beer. I bet you can just have one beer. And I said, I bet you're right. And you know what I did? I just had that one beer. And then the next day, when that same person got me really, really, really angry, the only thing I knew to do was to go to a bar and drink more than one beer. I drank all the whiskey and threw up on myself in an Uber cab, passed out in front of a bar, and had my phone stolen. And then finally some nice man came along, shook me to, got me a bottle of water, put me in a cab, which I had no money to pay for because the Uber cab had charged me for the throw up incident. And I made it home that night. That was that was a Thursday night. The Friday was the only day I ever called in sick for a hangover, ever. It was the one day I did. And I think it was the shame, that guilt, shame, and remorse of drinking when you shouldn't drink. It was bad. And that was not my last drunk. My last drink was at a wedding. I went to my cousin's wedding, and I brought a sober date because they tell you to in treatment. My sober date was on meth, which was not the best choice of a sober date. And so my meth date, he was, so we get there, and I'm drinking gin because I hate gin. So I knew if I drink gin, I won't drink as much. That was my solution to this problem. But see, the problem is as soon as I got a few gin drinks in me, switched to vodka. And then I went to wine. Then I went to champagne. And the worst thing was I could not get drunk. I could not get that mental shifts that happens, when drinking. I had a booze full of belly and a head full of treatment, and I could not get drunk. It was terrible. And so my date got really uncomfortable midway through the wedding, go figure. And so I drove him home. And I sat in his car, sat in his driveway and thought I could go back to the wedding. It was an open bar. I mean, that's amazing. And, it was early enough in the wedding. They hadn't had the first dance. They hadn't cut the cake. There still was a lot of wedding left to have. And then I thought, who did I sit at a table with tonight? Who did I have a conversation with? And I couldn't remember. I had no idea who I talked to at the wedding, what food I served, because I didn't care. That was the thing. I didn't care about anything but the alcohol. The only thing that mattered to me that night at the wedding was getting those drinks in. And everything else was just insignificant, just didn't matter. And I thought, there's something wrong with me. There's absolutely something wrong with me. And then I started to think back over my, 20-year career of this. And I realized that as soon as I start drinking, I can't stop. As soon as I put a drink in me, I set in motion something that I can't control. It is a force beyond me. And in that moment, I realized that I was an alcoholic, that's what that meant. And I realized that my treatment wasn't enough to help me with my alcoholism, that I needed something more. And I had gone to one AA meeting in the course of those sort of like 2 months that I was doing treatment. And I realized as I sat in that car that I could go back to the wedding and I can drink and no one will notice, no one will care. My family's a bunch of drunks, they don't care. Or I could go home and I could really get serious about my recovery. And that's what I did. I drove home and I went to an AA meeting the next day. It was a 2:00 Thursday or Sunday meeting. And I met the woman who would become my first sponsor. It was a very small meeting. I don't know about your weekend meetings, but they can be pretty sparsely attended. And so I was definitely the only newcomer. I was definitely the only one with 1 day sobriety. And she was so kind to me. And no one had been that sincerely kind to me in a long time because I wasn't kind. People didn't react to me well because I was always pushing and fighting and agitating. And so her kindness was a blessing. I mean, it was a miracle for me. And so what I did is I followed her around like a puppy. And because I knew what meetings she went to, I figured it out. And so I would go to those meetings. And then a few weeks in, I asked her to be my sponsor. And she said yes. And I went to her house that first Saturday morning. And she told me then that she had 7 months of sobriety. And that's where I figured if I can get 7 months, I could have that peace. I could get that serenity. I could have that joy. I didn't know any of those words at that point because they weren't in my vocabulary anymore, but I wanted whatever she had. And I said, if I get 7 months, I'll have what she has. And then I could do whatever I want. That was that was my game plan, real solid. And so she asked me, do you believe in a higher power? And I said, no. In the book, it says, and this is going to be a very poorly quoted book because I'm bad at that. But in every man, woman, and child is an inherent knowledge of God, something like that. And I feel like that's absolutely true. But for me, it was very, very, very small and dark. Like I had a void inside of me from as long as I can remember. I just felt like no one cared, no one loved me, no one wanted me. I was, there was no one looking out for me. And and she said, well, you have to pray. She said, I don't care who you pray to. I don't care, the doorknob, the group of drunks, like whatever you need to pray to, but you have to pray. And she started me on it very quickly, well before the 11th step. And so I prayed to my mom because my mom, was gone. And so, somewhere maybe in the universe. And I knew that if she could, she would give me all that I asked. She loved me unconditionally and was truly the most beautiful soul ever known. And so I prayed to her and I felt so awkward. I don't know if you've never, I had never said a prayer, but not even God help me, like never said a prayer in my life. And so to start to pray, I would just, talk to my mom on my way to work every day. And eventually they got more sort of focused. It was a little less just chitter chatter. It was a little more like, please, can you help me be kind to my coworkers? I'm tired of getting in trouble at work. I sort of worked on that. And then as I worked with my sponsor more, we worked the 12 steps as is written in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We read together every week, and it was wonderful. I saw myself on every page. I didn't know that other people planned their drinking. Okay, tonight I don't want to drink too much, so I'm going to drink Bud Light to start, and then at 11 o'clock I'll switch to whiskey, so I can get some whiskey in me, but not before this. I didn't, tonight I'm just going to do white wine because I can control myself better with white wine, and then I won't get so drunk around my family that I'll do something obnoxious. I didn't know that was not normal. I didn't know. I thought everyone did that. So so the second and third step, it was more like, I don't get it. I'll always be insane. I'm insane. It's just how it is. Like, that's just how it is. And she said, just come to believe. It's a cane. It's an action. You don't have to do it today. Just know that it can happen, and just keep moving forward, And so that's how I ran the steps, was like head down, move forward. And a lot like gave my will over to God. I was like, how am I supposed to give my will over something? I see how willful I was. I didn't even see how incredibly selfish and self-centered I was. But I believed that maybe it could happen. I came into the rooms looking at you guys, you beautiful, lovely people on this little squares that I can see, and thought, yeah, it worked for you, but it won't work for me. I'm terminally unique. I am a broken person beyond all you're broken. You don't know how broken I am. And so when I did the steps, it was a lot like, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. And that's why you need time. But anyway, so when I did pen to paper, it wasn't a huge amount of people because my life was so small. It was like I had, my family, a couple of friends. It was, my work, it was pretty, my life was so tiny. And when I worked it through with my sponsor, sponsors say a lot of mean things. They just say things where you're like, really? That's not nice. But it's true. They're telling you truth. And sometimes truth isn't easy to swallow. A sponsor has to care more about your sobriety than your feelings. And I've learned that. And so she's like, you constantly play the victim. You look at your life and think, if you had my life, you'd do this too. Or if if people had done you this wrong, you'd feel this way too. And it's like, what I didn't understand, and I do today, is that people do have things like that have happened to me in my life, and they don't react the way I reacted. They don't come out as a drunk, angry, bitter, anxious, agitated alcoholic. Like, it's not a normal reaction to, life circumstances. But for me, it was, because I had no skills. And so when I started working on 6 and 7, I feel like those are the steps, they're just a little blurb in the big book. I feel like those are the steps that I am constantly working now. Like, they're the ones that I sort of really work on today, like seeing what my character defects are, because they crop up all the time, like impatience. And I am so bossy. I am so pushy with my own agenda. And it's like, and then what is opposite action? Like pause, kindness, acceptance of others' opinions, it's like all the stuff that we don't want to do, but we do because I don't just want to stay sober. I want to be happy, and in order for me to be happy, I have to do good things. I have to be a good person. And 6 and 7 help me do that. They help me stay on the beam. And, 8 and 9, I didn't have any monetary amends to make, which, I guess is good. But there was a lot of like, I know I was emotionally abusive. I know I ignored you when you were in crisis. I know I wasn't available to you when you were in need. There was a lot of stuff like that, which is really not fun to say, because it's really owning that you're a bad person and we're a bad friend, we're a bad daughter, we're a bad sister. But the thing is because I've done all that cleanup, all my relationships today are like are from ground zero moving up. So I've built new relationships. I'm not in the hole of in debt anymore. The emotional debt of feeling like I owe people because I was unkind. It's like, I cleaned it up, and then we built a new relationship. And when my parents, when I was living in that residential hotel in the Tenderloin, my parents, it's my dad and my stepmom. She and my dad have been married for 36 years. And they showed up one time and said, can you just answer it sometimes? We just worry about you so much. We'll call and you just answer it when you want, but just answer it sometimes. And I think about that and how much damage I did to their sweet souls, that the worry and how afraid, and the way I looked, I was not a person you see today. And like how scared they were that they were going to get a call that I was dead in a ditch somewhere in the Tenderloin. I mean, like how, so anyway, my amends to them is I call them every week, whether they like it or not. And my stepmom's been sick. She has cancer. So for a while I was calling every day. And, but I do that because that's what it means to make amends. It's not, I'm sorry for what I did in the past. Bye now. It's, I'm sorry for what I did in the past. I'm going to do better moving forward. I'm going to be a better person to you from here on out. All my friends, I reach out to them. The one who came over after my DUI, I had brunch with her on Sunday, and she's still great. And that's the amends process to me. And the amends to me are like the meat, like where you really find your feet, because you're owning your stuff, you're admitting your stuff, and you're gonna do better. Like how much better, like what a program, what a great program. The 11th step I was really bad at. I was real bad at. I was real bad because I was getting better at the prayer, but I still didn't believe in God. So it's like I just felt like I was just shouting into the, to the void. And but it was fine. I still did it. Meditation I've gotten better about, but mostly because I run now, and so I do the meditation when I run. And when I got to the 12th step, I balked. I love that word. And because I was like, my sponsor's like, you have to start reaching out to newcomers. You have to start making yourself available to sponsor. And I thought, I'm a terrible person. I'm an empty vessel. I have nothing to give anyone. Why would I possibly ever, reach out to someone? They would just instantly know I'm a bad person. That my self-esteem was so low. But so I stopped talking to my sponsor for 3 months, which I do not recommend. And it eventually I started to get the feeling of when you're not working the program as it's illustrated to us. I started to get that restless, irritable discontentedness coming back up in me. And so I called my sponsor and I started reaching out my hand. When there was a new woman in the room, I would go over and just say, hi, my name is Sara, welcome. And that was it. Like I would just be the kind person in the room. And I didn't realize that was all I needed to do. Like I was like, oh, I really balked for nothing. And then I raised my hand to start sponsoring women. And the first time I raised my hand, a woman asked me if I'd sponsor her. And I was like, that is God working for me. that is truly, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I started working with her and doing what my sponsor did with me, reading the book. That was it. And it was after I started working with her and after I started reaching out my hand to other women. And at this point I was secretarying a meeting and, I think I was secretarying a meeting. And one day I realized that I wasn't anxious, that I wasn't agitated, that I wasn't angry. I think something occurred and I didn't react. I didn't care. I was like, oh, whatever. And I was like, what? Like, who is that? Like, that's not me. Like, I am reactive. I am angry. I'm out there. And like, I didn't care at all. It didn't faze me in the least. And I realized in that moment that I'd had this spiritual experience that's promised. I had my spiritual awakening, and that was a complete shift of paradigm. Like, I was a new person from inside. I didn't look different. I didn't, probably I sounded the same, but my heart had shifted in a way that was a blessing. Like, I had never known a moment of peace in my heart from the time I was a little kid. And here it was given to me by working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, how incredible is that? So I just dove right in, and then I started doing more service, and I started, and the thing about also my first year of sobriety, I wasn't really very friendly, and I didn't make any friends. And I do not recommend that, because the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is one of the best places in the world to make friends, because everyone is there with a heart full of love. Like, we all are rooting for you to succeed. We all want to be your friend and want to be a part of. Like, that is my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is who I truly hope to be and try to be in the rooms. And so I started like opening up to people, because I started to not feel so less than. And I started to make friends, and I started to do, service and get in the mix and get in the part of. And then my sponsor called me one day and said, I'm leaving Alcoholics Anonymous. I hate everyone. I can't stay. What? You can't do that. That's not how this works. And she wasn't drinking. She just she'd been bedridden with pregnancy for 7 months. And when she tried to get back into the rooms, she just couldn't find her feet anymore. And she was just done. And so the next phone call I made, actually, the first phone call I made was to my friend Kelly, who's sponsored by Megan, and said, do you mind if I ask Megan to sponsor me? And she was fine with it, which was good. But I wanted to get her, her clearance first. And then I called Megan, and I met with her. And the reason I chose Meg, we're guided in our own paths, I believe. But the reason that I asked Meg to sponsor me was because she was deep in AA. She loved AA the way I loved AA. She was running a program the way I wanted to run a program. And so I wanted to follow her. That was who I wanted to follow. And so when I told her that, she said, okay, let's start working together. And so the first thing she suggested was that I get involved in general service. And I assume general service is the same all over the country. It's just a bunch of people in business meeting arguing over like whether we're going to spend money on a microphone. General service, it became in my home group at the time, the position became available. And so I stepped in, and I had no idea what was happening for like a year. I was like, I don't get this at all. And then eventually everyone told me that was to be expected. And then, eventually you start to see how the wheels of AA move, how a thought becomes a decision, becomes an action, and how it moves from a person in a group to the district, to the area, to the delegate, and then back down. And you see something actually change, and usually they're small, like a couple words in a pamphlet here, or, but sometimes they're big changes, like they change the preamble. I mean, that's like a big change to the Alcoholics Anonymous. And like, I just got to witness it, and that was it. I mean, I was just there, and I was the recording secretary. So I just wrote everything down, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. AA is such a magnificent machine. How Bill put that together is just absolutely stunning. And then someone came up to me and said, hey, you'd be great event coordinator for intergroup. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'll do it. And all of a sudden I'm planning a New Year's Eve dance and dinner and speaker meeting. And like, I have no idea what's going on. And, but the thing is I know so many people. My notes for what I wrote here was service, fellowship, and God. Those are the things I wanted to touch on. And so service leads into fellowship, because I know the best people, the yes people. We're all the yes people, and we're everywhere. We're all in the same places. We're all in the general service, we're all in the inner group, and we're all at the conferences, and we do, but we do AA because we love AA. And I can count on any of them for any, if I just had a bad day and needed to talk, I could count on any of them to be a sympathetic ear that would listen. Or if I need a little bit of advice, or if I have a question about something in AA, or if something doesn't make sense to me, I ask the question. I'm like, how I was a person with not even like a friend. Like I was just this isolated entity. And now here I am with just this circle of love around me. And I feel so protected by it. A fellowship, if I'm, a drink isn't as, it's as close to me as to anyone, you know what I mean? Like I'm not guaranteed another day sober unless I do the work around, that I do. But the thing is that a fellowship really gives me reasons to not drink. Like I don't want to have to tell my sponsor and then 400 other people. Like I don't want to tell them that I had a drink, so I'm not gonna, because I'm vain. I am a vain person, and I don't want people to think ill of me. I would lose all my Facebook friends. These are the things I think of. But so I'm very, I would, if you are feeling disconnected, or you're new, or you're just not feeling like you're a part of, like, do service, like truly, like not just at the meeting level, but like in AA, like do service, because that's where you meet the people. Like that's where you connect. That's in my experience, because you see the same people month after month after month after month. And then eventually year after year after year after year. That's how it's worked for me. I've been in general service for, I think it's about 5 years now. And I love it. Where the delegate is coming to our meeting tonight to tell us what came down from New York, and I'm excited. I'm bringing cupcakes, and so my relationship with God, I came in. By the time I was 6 years sober, I just was like, I'm an atheist. That's just it. I don't believe in God. That's me. That's my identity. Whatever. I do service, and that's what I have going for me. And then something happened, which was called the pandemic. And then, thankfully I was connected enough with all my service that I had a lot of AA in my life still. Like every day I had something for AA, and I had a lot of sponsees at the time. I still do. And, but I also met a person who is also in AA, and we got together, and he loves God so much. Like he just shines like that spirit. And, he goes to church on Sundays, and he's just everything that like, I didn't realize a relationship with God could be. Like, I didn't know. And the thing is about him is that because I love him, my heart opened to God. And I don't, that's just my experience. That's just how it worked for me. And there was a shift. It was a very subtle shift, and I didn't notice it until I was doing some AA business, and the person I was working with was not my favorite person. And I was being very judgy of this person. And I was driving to meet them. So I'm in the car, judging, being irritable because I am judging. And all of a sudden, a voice that I don't, it wasn't me because it was kind, said, isn't he brave to be doing what he's doing? Because he wasn't good at it. And that's what I was judging. It's like, isn't he a brave soul? And then my thoughts about this person completely changed. And I thought, he is brave. Like I wouldn't have stepped up to do this service if I didn't feel like I could do a good job, and he did, because he wanted to be of service to Alcoholics Anonymous. And in that moment, everything twisted. And I was like, that's not me that did that. I'm not nice. I am like, I was sitting there in judgment, just with all these evil thoughts. And then God spoke to me and said, stop, be kind. We're all doing our best. And in that moment, I was like, oh, that's what it is. That's all it is for me. That's what it was for me. And so when my heart opened a little bit, it allowed God to find a way in. I had completely sealed off that part of me as a child because my life, my childhood was, when I was little, was really bad. And it just sealed, like there's just nothing. And but just the opening, and God found a way in. And that's how it is today. I pray every morning, and I go to church with churchy man over here, and I feel like my life is so blessed. The best thing that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, not the best, because there's so many best things, but one thing that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me is the ability to change. When I was drinking, I would dig in my heels, even if I knew I was wrong about something, just to be, contrary. I would not, even if I knew my life was going to be a mess and everything was going to crash around me, I would stick in, because that's just me. And, and that's how it was for years and years and years. And there was no possibility of change. And today, the person I am today, when I had like a year sober, I thought, this is it. This is as good as it's going to get. I am happy with this. This is the best. And then, at 5 years sober, I was like, this is best. It can't get any better. And then here I am, at 8 years, and it's like, it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better. I can't wait to see where it is in another 8 years, because, I finally found my relationship with God. I finally found a peace in my heart around who I am and what I've done and what I've been through. I finally found the people that I want to share my life with. I can't believe, it took me, I'll be 46 this summer. And I have never felt better about my life or myself or what I have. And I don't have much. I'm not, the lap of luxury. And, but I'm happy. I'm just so happy. And I'm so grateful that you asked me to come and speak. And I'm so glad I didn't know it was going to be 45 minutes, because then I would have freaked out all day. But I'm very happy that I was able to be here today and share with you guys. So thank you.